All right, here we are. Another fabulous Friday morning for me, midday for others, evening. Jason, thanks for joining my little show.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. I'm glad you
Well,
could have
yeah,
all of those other people as the opening acts so that we could do this.
well, a lot of them call themselves guinea pigs, so maybe
Yeah.
opening acts. I don't know, but today's the day. Everybody's been waiting for this one. Let's make ourselves feel good because, of course, you crack me up online, which is always fun to read your commentary. Tell us a little bit about who you are for the crazy people who don't know you, those living under a rock. What do you do?
Who am I? Well, I'm a 27-year recovering attorney. That's my standard line. I currently work for Conga. I'm actually about to move over to the product launch team, where I basically do a little bit of everything. It's sort of a startup feel. I work with the product team to make sure that what's going into the product is what people really want, what the market's demanding, what customers are demanding. Then when they build it, I kind of go out and tell the world about it and what's coming. Work with marketing, work with partner team, work with even our sales team, because a lot of times the sales folks at these technology companies may not necessarily have the lingo to hang with the lawyers. So whenever lawyers are on the call, they're always calling me saying, "Hey, I need you to translate for them." So, at that point, I feel like one of these like CIA translators that can only speak the language of the
Yeah.
locals.
You
And
know what? The legal language is it's not even legalese. So we're not talking about legalese, obviously. We're talking about the lingo of in-house counsel. And
yeah,
you and I have been around this for a long time because we were both kid geniuses. Remember when we were 6 years old and started law school together? That was fun.
exactly.
Um, but the one thing I'm seeing over and over that hasn't changed, and I've as we've both been at this for a while, is really still the sales efforts and the sales team, and sometimes even the marketing content I see put out there. They just aren't understanding our world of legal. I don't. How do you? So I know you're trying to bridge that, but what is it? Is it because are people still thinking that CLM systems are just another SaaS? Are they forgetting they're selling to a different beast?
Yeah, well, so the interesting thing, and I've had this conversation several times with specifically with CLM, it's sort of like document management. If you'll remember, back when you were five, like back in the early 2000s, matter management was kind of shifting from case management to matter management so that it could be all things to all people. And then everybody was trying to say, okay, well, we need document management light. The matter management vendors were buying these tools. And of course, iManage was all the rage within the law firm space. And then when lawyers moved to corporate legal, it was suddenly, oh, wait, we have a corporate document management strategy. We're not just going to let legal own the document management system.
Right.
So I think the same things happened with contract management, which is we sort of started with the idea that contract management really wasn't part of the legal tech stack. Until 2000, I started my first project in 2006. I'd say probably 2008, 2009 is really when it became part of the legal shows, right? The legal
Yeah.
tech vendors and everything. And so suddenly you started having lawyers becoming bigger stakeholders,
Mm-hmm.
predominantly on the sales side contracting, because procurement was always kind of its own thing already. And it
Mm-hmm.
was it was kind of a mature thing. And I think what happened was then it became part of the legal tech. So if you go to any consulting firm, you go to any vendor, CLM is considered part of the legal tech stack, matter management, e-billing, IP, CLM, e-discovery, legal hold. And then what happened was people started realizing again when we started implementing these systems, well, wait a second, in order for me to really get a true CLM system up and working right for a company, I've got to have sales and finance and other groups involved in that process.
Yeah,
And so I think,
you know what? I am not a fan of CLM being a part of the legal ops checklist of things to do. So I
yeah,
don't know. It's I don't know. I don't know why I'm not. Well, I know why I'm not a fan of it. I think it is such a domain
yes,
heavy area. It's no different than throwing in IP ops or litigation ops. I feel like maybe that's just my old stomping ground. When I was in-house at Microsoft, we had kind of three quite different operating functional
yeah,
teams that were doing ops. One was an IP. Obviously, we had a huge patent portfolio at Microsoft. When I was there in litigation ops, we had immigration and HR. They had ops. chunks of ops. And I was obviously doing
specialties.
Contracting. Yeah. And then when I think of legal ops now, and having been a part of that since the beginning of it, before I knew it had a name, I feel like CLM gets lobbed into it. The others don't. Like litigation still kind of stands on its own, and nobody would touch it. But CLM has now been lobbed into it. I don't know if there's like a swinging pendulum similar to what maybe you've described, but I don't like it being part of it. I think it's a tail that starts wagging the dog. I think it absolutely gobbles up any legal ops professional that tries to tackle it. And that's why so many of them, quote, won't touch it with a 10-foot pole. I mean, I hear that all the time, where they're like, I did one CLM implementation. I'll never do that again. It's like what is it? Why?
Yeah, and I think that's the cycle. So the cycle was it was really an enterprise process that legal started taking a bigger ownership in, and then it became considered part of the legal tech stack. And now we're starting to recognize, no, it's not legal tech. This is an enterprise application with multiple stakeholders. And I think we've kind of come full circle. I had this conversation with Colin Levy one time because I think he entered the market a little bit after I did. I've been in this since the 1900s. And he said, I think it does a disservice to call CLM legal tech. And I was like, ironically, there was a time where it was starting to grow, and we had to fight to get people to understand that CLM was part of the legal tech stack, although it wasn't legal tech. It was legal was a big stakeholder in it. And that was the big push. And then it sort of went too far that way, and now it's coming back. But I really think it's one of those things where, again, and that's why I equate it to document management. It wasn't something, and oftentimes when I do these podcasts, people ask me, well, who should own contracts or who should own contracting? And, I give the legal answer. It depends.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Like
I
which
say no.
business but the ironic part of that is, at the end of the day, a contract is a legal artifact. It's a creation of the legal profession. Right. And so I think that's where people get tripped up, because it's also a commercial document. It's a commercial vehicle. So what we've done, and not to shamelessly plug our company, but what we're doing is really focusing on data. And I think this is where CLM and legal ops have sort of paralleled in the trajectory over the last decade. It's been a decade already of growth, because contracts were so full of unstructured data for the company. Legal ops is trying to make legal show their value to the company and act more like a business unit. And so those two kind of come together and create this perfect storm of, okay, well, that's why there's so much CLM and legal ops overlap today, because legal's trying to act more like the rest of the business. The contracts are really the source of all of that data. If you'll remember, matter management got to a point where everybody was yawning. Okay, matter management, boring, or whatever. And then there was sort of this reinvention of big data. Hey, you've got all these years of matter management data. Now let's analyze it and let's start doing predictability and things like that. I think that's
data. Yeah, I think the thing with contracting, though, is there's the data that's inside the four corners of the document, and in that regard, totally understand what you're talking about. But then there's the thirst and the hunger for the data around the contracting operations.
Exactly.
Where is it? Who is it? How long has it been there? Who's got it next? Where's it going? Why can't I find it? All of that. And I think that, to me, is much more of legal ops cores, understanding how is the legal department functioning when it comes to contracting. And then there's the data inside the four corners. And I think those are two different problems. I think there's
100%.
Different solutions for it too. So I want to poke a little bit at the end-to-end CLM. I do my little air quote bunnies. And by the way, as everybody knows, I always say, like, this is not a sponsored event. This has nothing to do with any one particular technology, but I poke it all the time. Is end-to-end CLM a bit of a pipe dream, not from a technical perspective that it can't work, because of course we know the technology can work. We also know that you can't just slap it onto certainly not a complex enterprise. So to me, end-to-end CLM systems are a little concerning, because I think it puts the contract as the whoop, it looks like I had a little tech thing. I'm back. But it makes the contract the thing that, I don't know, that is dictating how business is done, instead of the contracting being a piece of the
Representative.
sales ops process, the purchasing process, the HR process. So I just don't know if end-to-end CLM, I think it works for small companies. I think it works for new and young companies. I'm not sure I get it for real enterprise, but I know it's being tried. I don't know. Should it be the contract that is driving everything?
I think you've just opened up the Pandora's box of why CLM is the way it is today. The idea is, and it's funny because I've had a couple of friends who are looking at CLM systems and evaluating. Of course, they know where I work, so they ask me questions, and then they ask me questions about the other vendors too. And and look, I'm not here just to promote us, because I was a consultant for 17 years working with all of the vendors, so I know where lots of bodies are buried.
Mm-hmm.
I will say that what you just pointed out was the fact that this is why process comes before technology. Because when you talk about end-to-end, I've had several come to me saying, hey, I don't want a full end-to-end CLM. I'm like, okay, what are you trying to achieve? And then when they start, here's the 10 things I need, they're kind of end-to-end CLM things that they're asking for. They just don't know it, and they don't want it to be the big thing. They just want it to be a simple solution. And so if we're talking about, I just need something to analyze a single document, then that's one thing. But then when you start thinking about, well, I need to analyze this document in relation to all the other deals I've done, now you're expanding a little bit more. Well, then you start talking about, do I want this document to drive the deal, or do I want the business strategy to drive what goes into the contract? Now it gets a little bit bigger, a little more complex, because there's more stakeholders feeding data into the process. The one piece of data you didn't mention is, what about the data about the deals we never signed, the deals that we backed away from? I think that kind of data
aren't contracts yet, right?
Exactly.
Those are deals.
Exactly. And so how many
and which is the business, the deal making, the business.
When does it convert? Now we're in a unique position because our company has the CPQ, the whole deal side of things that feed into contracting as well. Yeah. Ironically, that wasn't where it started. The company started with CLM based on, built on Salesforce, with the idea that, well, look, you're doing everything in this CRM system, which is where you're building all the relationship data and all of the information about the deals and the parties. And then that naturally has to flow somewhere. So flow it into the contract, which kind of drives the deal making, drives the contract language, and then the after effect of managing obligation. So that's where I see it as contract management's not the end-to-end. Contract management is a piece of a broader end-to-end strategy. But again, that's a lot of effort to be able to kind of string the beginning of the world to the end of the world and everything in between.
Right. Look, the moral of every story is what's the problem you're trying to solve. And I think contracting can't be the definition. That's not an answer. So what's the problem? Our contracting sucks. No, that's not the problem. And so then when you dig in, you really get a better sense. I like still thinking of really like CLM systems, the end-to-end is really when you're worried about that workflow, the movement. How fast can you get these four corners to travel across the enterprise? Yep. To me, is very different than I need to speed up the review. Now we've got a ton of point solutions, of course, that have popped up in the last, handful of years. And we've gone, oh my goodness, 13 minutes without saying AI. I think you get the prize. I'm keeping track. 13 minutes is the longest.
It's funny you say that, because I'm thinking in my mind, okay, there's a good AI segue here to what you're talking about, but I wasn't going to say it.
But because, are you a robot? No. Okay. So we're conditioned. We've now been trained to bring this up. So, okay. Go ahead. Take us there. What are the latest thoughts on what it can and can't and shouldn't do? And you did a really good post this morning. And I said, we got to talk about this over coffee today. So GPT-5 came out, all this stuff. Can anybody keep up? Let me start with that. Let's be honest.
No, let's just all admit we have AI fatigue.
Fatigue and FOMO.
And you can't spell fatigue. You can't spell fatigue without AI, right?
Yeah. I see what you mean.
And I think today is a perfect example. Today and yesterday, and I have LinkedIn fatigue at this point too. I have to say, because people have now started trying to figure out how to game the algorithms, and it's all about it's all about the humans trying to outwit the robots. That's where everything has gone, right? So one of the things I talk about is so many of the vendors jumped on the Gen AI track in the CLM space, like so quick.
Yes,
Oh, it can
everyone,
draft, it can do all this stuff.
Yep.
And I remember talking to my team internally going, okay, I know I'm a lawyer. I'm probably a little bit more conservative than the marketing and sales and product people.
Right.
But we gotta see this thing like for what it is. There's some really good stuff, but there's some really bad stuff. And you've got to make sure that you balance that. And so one of the things that I had people asking me about was, okay, well, how much data should I keep when I do a legacy migration? So anybody buys a new system, they're migrating all their legacy contracts. Even if they're not putting in a new system, they want access to all their legacy contracts. Oh, wow, the LLMs can analyze all this stuff and can give me all of this data and can start suggesting red lines and start drafting documents. And I'm like, yeah, let me ask you the first thing. Forget about AI. How many of your contracts in your legacy database right now, or across your company, wherever they're stored in trunks of cars and file cabinets, databases, how many of those are pristine, perfectly match what your playbook, your go forward playbook strategy would be? Or how many of those did you negotiate at the 11th hour on the last day of a quarter, the last day of a year?
Right.
We got to get this deal in. We give away a little bit more than we would just because we got to hit the number, right? Now, if you think about it, if you're leveraging all of that data into the LLM process, then it's training on the good, the bad, and the ugly, which means and again, keep in mind, this generative AI is not reasoning. It's pattern recognition. And the very ironic thing is we as lawyers have all of a sudden become in love with math. Although we don't know that it's necessarily math behind the scenes, but that's all that's driving all of this AI is math and vectors and calculations and predictability and things like that. It's looking for patterns. So when it sees the patterns of your contracting, it's going to include the bad ones too. So when it makes that red line suggestion, and that was an article I wrote a few weeks ago about, be careful what you're trying to do when you're streamlining process using this AI technology, because it's going to be built to bypass things that you would normally stop and review and negotiate, because it's been trained move faster, not better. And so if there's something that you redline all the time, it may look at that and go, you know what, let's change the language and let's just bypass this. Well, it may change the language to something that isn't part of your playbook or isn't beneficial to you, but it helps you go faster.
Yeah, I think, you know what, so that's super important for also people, I think, to just remember, especially the lawyers who are really trying to embrace this and really want to use it. You're not going to get the same output every time. No. That's a big aha moment, because that is the nature of generative AI. I was at an event all day yesterday here at the Microsoft campus on AI, Copilot, all this, and we were doing some hands-on stuff and building agents. And the reality is that there were so many aha moments for people, across the room. But that feeling of, okay, I'm finally going to get to trusting the process. But wait a minute, you didn't get the same answer that I did, because we had these fake, these prompts we were co-writing at the same time using the pre-written prompt. Like we were fed these things. And we're like, wait a minute, my thing didn't say that. Did your thing say that? And you're seeing people go, why isn't it giving me this? I didn't get the same answer she got. We put in the exact same inputs, identical, because we're all feeding from the exact same source information. Yeah. And I think that aha moment, I kind of, I said, you know what? I don't want AI to help me review contracts. Right? What? What is she thinking? And she's a consultant. Well, what? But we're coming to you to tell us what's the best AI to buy, which is already the worst question you can ask me, because I will say, no, I'm not. I refuse to answer that question. No. But I think actually for contract review, my life's mission has been, I want to empower the business so I could stop doing nonsense work. The way I empower the business is say, this is a fallback, this is not. This is okay, this isn't. If it isn't that black and white, I can't empower a procurement organization of 500 people and any big corporate, and feel good about it. And now you're telling me, you know what, I'm going to empower them through using AI, which sounds logical. They're going to get a slightly different answer every time. And I'm not even talking about the drafting. I'm sorry. AI cannot draft worth crap. It copies and pastes chunks into places they don't belong. So forget drafting. But even just review, thanks for issue spotting. Thank you. Yeah. but that's about it. So that, I think that's like how do we help lawyers go, it's really good at very specifically these things. This other stuff is not good at yet. I'm just going to keep saying yet. It'll get there. But is that like, how do you approach that when everybody's rushing to buy something, but they really don't understand it?
I think that's why we have fatigue, because you can't address that, because it's sort of like, toddlers who just, they want the thing and they want the shiny object, and no, they want to stick the fork in the outlet because it looks interesting. No, I'm telling you, don't do that right now. Like that's not a safe thing to do.
Or maybe ever. Maybe that's what they should never do.
Yeah.
And that's some of that too. How do you balance?
I remember like 2 years ago, I saw some tech bro post on LinkedIn, and he was like, "Oh, guys, this is breaking news. You can get rid of your lawyers now. I just crafted this, complex lease agreement that I would have had to pay my lawyers $2,000 to draft. And I was able to use, and this was probably ChatGPT 2 at the time.
Yeah.
It was like, I was able to use ChatGPT and draft this whole thing. I don't even need my lawyer," to which I simply responded sort of sarcastically, because that's the way I do it. But also there was so much truth in it. Look, the amount of money you just saved drafting this contract pales in comparison to the amount of money you're going to spend on the litigation attorney later that has to actually litigate that contract that you just drafted. And I was being 90% serious about that, because, I don't know if you remember, okay, you probably don't, you're too young, but back in the 80s, there was a company called InnoLaw Press. And I remember here in Texas, InnoLaw Press came up with these do-it-yourself will kits. And it was just a lot of if-then statements.
Yeah.
And it was baked in, the lawyers had built in the, well, if it's this, then it's this. If not, it's something else. And they put it on the racks at Best Buy or Office Max or whatever, where you could go buy these kits, put the floppy disk in your computer, and build your own will. And of course, the lawyers went nuts and was like, wait a second, this is unauthorized practice of law. I kind of hedged on that. I said, look, I think it's a good thing, because I don't necessarily need to walk into a lawyer's office and have them draft a will from scratch and pay, let's say I'm paying $500 an hour, and let's say it takes 3 hours for the end-to-end process. I don't need to pay that first $500. What if I can do it myself, walk in and let them do the last mile? Exactly. Yep. So I think that's kind of the mindset I have with this stuff. The problem is this generative AI is such a black box. There's so much that we don't know about. Where are the answers coming from? How is it resolving this? Versus, at least with InnoLaw Press, you could look at it and say, okay, yes, lawyers defined this if-then decision tree. And so we kind of know why it's answering this way or guiding it this way. With Gen AI, it's a crapshoot. I even proved that point by just going to 5 different systems and saying, give me a random number between 1 and 50. And they all gave me the number 27. And I'm like, that doesn't feel random. That's pattern recognition. That shows this is not. Now, you can put other Python tools behind these to do some things like it, but that's where we're at right now. We're at this kind of shiny object moment where everybody's enamored with all the possibilities, and lots of people are chasing the VC money, because there's lots of VC money being pumped into, oh, you got a good idea, you got this.
Please, I would say that started around COVID, though. Like with COVID and the explosion of CLM tech in general, and let's call it CLM tech adjacent, CLM adjacent tech. The amount of money that has flown into this is obviously unprecedented. Fine. It is causing such terrible behaviors. And we're seeing these exits of things. We're like, that's the end game, though. That's the end game. And I'm gonna poke at the serial entrepreneurs. CLM tech is not a place that I want a CLM entrepreneur. How do we help even clients pick technology? Like, I like to know the owners. I like to know how they started. Even the older companies, like, where'd you come from? What made you get into this space? And these new ones, for sure. I don't care what brainy, zippity, zappity thing you did or studied in tech school, some MIT. I don't care. You don't know contracting. And that's with all due respect to those who are exiting recently, about to exit. Just say, well, I don't care about the exit, because you know what? All their clients are screwed. That's what's happening. These I think companies, corporate companies, it's killing. I'm watching going, are we really going to keep this going?
And I think that's the difference between us and them, which is I don't want to sound like I'm overly noble in what we're trying to do, but we're trying to solve problems for businesses because I enjoy kind of building the puzzles, like figuring out where can we make things work that haven't worked? Where can we solve problems that companies, like some companies, their problems are just basic problems and they're easy to fix if you have the right mix of people and process and then the technology. What's happened now is and I think it's maybe even a generational thing too, that folks are like, oh, I mean, look at Base 44. I don't know if you've read anything about this guy, but this guy's like just decided he was going to do vibe coding. And in January, started a company called Base 44, where you can go out, and I've tried it. You go out to Base 44 and you type in, here's my business idea. Here's what I want to do, my little mom and pop shop kind of deal. And in 5 minutes, it will build you a fully functional e-commerce website that you could literally just go load up and start running a business. He just sold that business for $80 million to Wix in 6 months. He didn't have a VC plan. He didn't have any sort of pitch deck. He literally built this vibe coding, got like 2 million subscribers at $20 a month, and then sold it. And so I think what's happening is people are starting to, I mean, hell, if kids can become millionaires playing Fortnite and Roblox and these other things, they're looking at like, hey, here's the shortcut to retirement. And frankly, I wish I could retire early, but I think the startup mentality has become more of the, I'd rather start. I mean, I see it with AGCs that tell me, well, our GC is saying we need to do AI. What does your product do for AI? My response is always, what are you trying to do? What are you trying to do as a business?
And that's the
because my answer is irrelevant. My answer is irrelevant on what our AI does, because I need to know, like, you can't just slap AI into your company and think that's going to solve my problems. In fact, it's probably going to do worse. It's a lot like getting in your car saying, I know where I want to go. I don't know how to get there. But instead of punching it into the GPS map, letting it load, and then telling me direction by direction, instead I'm getting on the highway and I'm pushing the gas pedal as fast as I can, which means I'm going to go faster and farther than I would have, but I may be going completely wrong direction. And I think that's where we're at today. When I look at the CLM and adjacent market, it's 240 something vendors, 250 vendors. As of 2017, there was less than 20 in the market.
No, I used to know them all. This is what I say now.
Exactly.
I'm like, I used to know them all. I don't pretend to. We can't even keep up. And when we talk about AI, what I've discovered also really goes a long way, I think, for some of the AGCs who come, like my GC said, I have to do this. Like, okay, let's find something that you can dabble in and you can say you are experimenting and exploring and using AI, but please don't chase AI for the solution that's going to fix your contracting problems. Let's find a use case, a little thing you can dabble in that is AI. And then let's fix contracting, of course, with the process and the realignment of roles and all that stuff. And eventually, that you'll be able to leverage one to help the other. But they need to also show progress. They need to also demonstrate to the broader C-suite that legal isn't the old school, And what's nice now, I think, with some of the point solutions is that they can do that. They can dabble pretty cheaply and pretty quickly. And it isn't the big implementation of an enterprise system, which has its place, because I obviously am more familiar with prior iterations of, whatever. And because all the different products and things, and there are ways that I think today that frenzy, that FOMO can be kind of tempered and say, okay, we're gonna get you on an AI roadmap. I'm gonna start here so you can say, yes, we're doing it. Here's how it's gonna help for this thing. And by the way, I'm also making progress on the bigger problem. I think that's the solutions just can't be binary. They can't be.
But what's funny is what you just described really has nothing to do with AI. It's the basic formula for everything. And I think that's the point to get across, which is whether it's technology, non-AI technology, whether it's AI, whether it's any other thing, like, you've got to figure out the use cases first. Let the use cases drive that. And the use cases have to be built off of what are you trying to achieve as a business, as a goal. And it could be corporate wide. It could be legal department folding into, I want to be part of the business structure and strategy. And that's where I think legal operations really drives things, which is be that point person up front to say, look, we're going to prove value to the company by showing how our use cases can be embedded into the overall corporate strategy. And then down the road, we may leverage some technology or AI to enhance pieces of that. but
That's
it
right.
can't be an AI or technology first answer, because that'll
Well,
never.
there you have it. That is the best closing statement. It can't be an AI first plan. With that, this was a very serious conversation, Jason. I was expecting a lot more giggle time from us, but this is a very important topic. So we're gonna have to do this again, and then we could talk about all the silly stuff, or certainly the silly aspects of our day jobs.
Oh, I
And
thought we were talking about the silly stuff. I'm sorry.
AI is a
I
little
love
silly.
this.
AI is a little
Yeah.
silly. Thank you so much. We're gonna do this again. Happy Friday.
Thank you so much.
Take
Thank
care,
you for
everybody.
having me on. It's always great being on with a legend.